I know the Booming Blade build, but I've been sitting on this build idea since before it was even in the game, and now that it is in the game, it makes the build even better. This is kind of a Thor-inspired build. I guess you could say it's a very Thor-inspired build, but I've always been a big fan of dwarves, and the Dwarven Thor is in this game, and combining, you know, the cool stuff that you could use with the Dwarven Thor with all sorts of great playstyles in the game, as well as now the fact that Booming Blade exists. I know you can't use Booming Blade on throwing attacks, but that's part of the build. You can have great throwing mechanics as well as great melee mechanics. It's really fun. If you want the TLDR breakdown, it's 5 levels of Eldritch Knight Fighter for extra attack, as well as you know, your weapon packs, so you can throw weapons and have them come back to you. Obviously, the Dwarven Thrower doesn't need that, but early game, you'll need that. And then it's 5 levels into Tempest Cleric for all the thundery, lightningy goodness that you get from that, as well as just, you know, being a 5-level dip into Cleric. And then the last 2 levels I put into Paladin for this build, just so we can get some smites. So like I said, you have incredible melee fighting, incredible thrown damage, and it's just a great fit into really any party. You can be a great support, obviously, with your cleric levels. You can do a ton of melee damage. You can be a frontline tank. This is just a super fun build and very thematic. It's very Thor inspired. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys do end up enjoying it. If you do, go ahead, drop a like. I would very much appreciate it. Subscribe. Getting sort of close to that 500 subscriber mark, so we can get monetized on the channel. That'd be really cool. So if you haven't subscribed, you enjoy the videos, you know, consider subscribing. The next video that I upload will be the next part of our 4-player honor mode run. That I just need to stop being lazy and upload it. I have all the footage and everything. I just like I said, need to stop being lazy. So, you know, maybe a like, maybe a comment would, you know, go a long way to help me not be lazy today. So, and actually get that uploaded for you guys. Regardless, I'm gonna go ahead, get on into the build. Hopefully you guys do enjoy, like I said, and let's do it. I remember to not outro it this part. Okay. All right, getting into the build, we are, of course, going to be playing as a dwarf in today's video because, well, we're using a throwing dwarf build. It's the throwing dwarf. You can also go Thorf because, like, it's Thor, but he's a dwarf. You can go mini Thor. I don't know. You can see it as like an acolyte of Thor or an avatar of Thor. I don't know. However you want to, you know, rationalize it in your head, do you? But yeah, we're playing a dwarf, a gold dwarf specifically because I do like the hit point increase that you get. The Dwarven Toughness is pretty good. And in terms of your levels, there are, you know, a million different ways to level this character. I'm going to show the way that I think is the most, like, just raw power build. But by all means, you know, we'll get to these splits when we get to them later on. But also go ahead and take your levels in any order you please leveling up. I would probably recommend grabbing a couple levels of fighter and then getting some of your early cleric stuff online, maybe like 2 or 3 levels of cleric, then going back into fighter, or, you know, just beelining for extra attack. Do whatever feels natural to you in the moment, or you can just, you know, play the game as a fighter or as a cleric up until you get enough levels to respec with everything you would want at that certain point. But yeah, just leveling up, do it however you darn well please. But I am going to go ahead, start off as a fighter. This gives us all the proficiencies we want with you know, medium armor, heavy armor, shields, all the weapon proficiencies, everything you could want. And it also gives us constitution saving throw proficiency, which is going to be nice for when we get some of our concentration cleric stuff later on. Fighting style, I'm actually going to go ahead and say protection. You can go with defense, you can go with dueling if you want, but I kind of like protection. You can kind of turn this into a bit of a defender build as well. When you have a shield equipped, which we will, you impose disadvantage on an attack against your allies when you are within 5 feet, and you must be able to see the attacker. But I don't know, I think it's a pretty cool build. Deity, I have the mod installed again, but yeah, Moradin, your dwarf. There's also probably a mod that'll let you go with Thor. Talos is also pretty fitting if you want to be less good, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm just gonna go with Morden. And for back-rolling win with Soldier, it gives you athletics and intimidation proficiency. And then for your starting abilities, this is gonna be a build that relies on the strength elixirs, but if you don't want to use them, then by all means you can ignore them and you can drop your charisma. You don't really need any dex with this build either. The one thing I would recommend keeping is going to be your 17 con, and then you can, you know, get your 16 strength this way if you want. And then you still have a little bit extra to, you know, get some points into wisdom. And then if you even want to do something like, you know, that you can, yeah, just play around with it. But I would recommend the 17 in wisdom or the 17 in con, drop your strength, and then, you know, just even out the rest wherever. You can get a little bit of dex in here. Never hurt nobody. You have a little bit of charisma. That's what I would go with. But if you don't want to rely on strength elixirs, then by all means play around with the stats, but make sure you have an odd number in constitution. That's all I will say. As for your starting abilities, it's another pick your favorite situation. Acrobatics is pretty good. If you can get perception, I quite like taking perception. If you can get it, take it. It's one of the better skills that comes up quite often outside of combat. And then acrobatics is just useful to have. So yeah, keep your balance on your feet, helps you resist being shoved. Pretty useful ability. So we'll go ahead and grab that. But by all means, pick your favorite there. Let's get into the rest of the leveling. Where'd you go, Mini Thor? We need you, bud. Fighter level 2, we're going to go ahead and get ourselves Action Surge, one of the best abilities in the game, of course. We'll go ahead and grab that. Fighter level 3, we get our subclass, and as a throwing build, we are actually going to go ahead and be grabbing Eldritch Knight. I love that I've been able to use Eldritch Knight in many of my build videos so far. It's just a very underrated and underappreciated subclass that actually gets a lot of fun stuff, especially now that you know, a certain cantrip has been added. But the main thing we're getting here that we actually want is the weapon bond feature. Well, amongst other, you know, great features. But ritually bind a weapon in your main hand. The weapon can be knocked out of your hand and it automatically returns to you when thrown. That is going to be very useful for you throughout a majority of the game. The end game weapon that we use with this build, which I'm sure you can guess, has the returning property, but you know, up until then you don't really have too many options. If you want to go sword and board or hammer and board, as it were, you can of course use something like the returning pike if you want, but you know, if you don't want to do that and still want to have a shield, then you know, you can get this weapon bond feature and throw whatever the hell you damn well please. As for your cantrips, I'm sure you can see where this is going. This is a fucking Thor build. You're darn tootin' we're taking Booming Blade. It just has to be done for this build. I'm gonna try to get away from using Booming Blade, but you know, also, like, why when it's so good? But I understand that not everyone likes to use the power ability stuff. And then for your other cantrip, pick your rootin' tootin' favorite. My favorite personally is Minor Illusion, so I'm going to grab that. As for your spells, there are a couple of pretty good options. I'm going to recommend Shield because it is fantastic, just a great defensive reaction to have, and keep yourself even more defended than you already will be. Package from Evil and Good can be good to just have a day-long concentration spell if you want to use any of the items in the game that you know, can be activated while you're concentrating. Just a nice spell to have for that. Magic Missile is of course pretty good. Chromatic Orb is good damage, but I'm going to go ahead and grab Protection from Evil and Good because there are a lot of items, especially early on, that do activate while concentrating, so I'll grab that. And then from your expanded spell list, you can grab anything you want here. Pick your favorites. Magic Missile, again, will still be good here. Long Strider will eventually end up getting from an item, but if you want to have it throughout the majority of the game and don't have anyone else in your party to cast it, you can get it here. And then same thing with a Hand Sleep. I kind of like it Hand Sleep for this guy, so we're going to grab that. At Fighter level 4, we get ourselves another spell. Pick your favorite. You can grab Magic Missile here if you want. You can also grab Thunder Wave. I think Thunder Wave is pretty cool, but Thunder Wave will require an intelligence DC roll, and we don't really have any intelligence, and Magic Missile doesn't require any rolls. Booming Blade uses your attacking modifier, so that's why we don't really have to worry about that here. But yeah, if you want to use Thunder Wave, you can. If you want to use like the Headband of Intellect early on, you certainly can do that for better DC. But yeah, just grab Magic Missile, grab whatever you want. As for your feat, I'm sure you can go ahead and guess it. We are, of course, going to be taking Tavern Brawler and using the point here to dump into our Constitution to get up to 18 Constitution. When you make an unarmed attack, use an improvised weapon, or throw something, your strength modifier is added twice to the damage and attack rolls. This just absolutely skyrockets our damage, especially with the strength elixirs. Obviously, this is why the build relies on them, but again, if you don't want to use them, you can bump your strength up here with the elixir, and you can use something like the Potion of Everlasting Vigor to get higher strength. So yeah, there are ways to increase your strength if you don't want to use the potions, but yeah, they're there for a reason, so use them. It makes it for the smoothest option. Now, finally, at Fighter level 5, we will be getting our extra attack, which is great. Now, there are, like I said, many an option to spread this build out, like some different winding paths or different forks in the road. If you want to take 6 levels and just do a 6-6 split, it is a very viable option. You get an extra feat that way, but it's not really necessary. But if you just really want another feat, then by all means you can do that. If you are playing without strength elixirs, I would probably recommend going with a 6-6 split so you can get that extra feat to bump your strength up to probably max strength at that point. You can also use Ethel's Hair and get it higher that way. But yeah, for the testing purposes and for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to go ahead and do the 5-5-2 split that I think is the strongest. But like I said, if you want to go 6/6, then that is totally viable. Like I said, you will get this extra feat. You can use it on an ability improvement for your strength. You can use it on an ability improvement for your constitution. You can take something like alert. You can take, you know, mobile, lucky, warcaster, anything, you know, that your heart desires. You can. But what I am personally going to recommend doing at this level is taking your first level in cleric, which gets you some fun stuff, including your subclass, which we will be taking the Tempest domain, which gets us some nifty stuff. Your faith has made you the very thunder that quakes the black firmament, the lightning coursing through the veins of a terrible storm. That's just pretty cool. And if you want to, you know, take your cleric levels early, you get still get heavy armor proficiency from this, as well as all martial weapon proficiency. So you'll still have all of that if you want to take your cleric level very early on or play through the early game as a cleric, which, you know, is always a good option. You get Thunder Wave and Fog Cloud as prepared spells, and your subclass feature is Wrath of the Storm. As a reaction, strike back at an attacking creature dealing 2 to 16 lightning or thunder damage. The target takes half damage on a successful saving throw. So whenever someone hits you, you can just decide to say, F you, here's some storm. And yeah, just do a fat chunk of damage. That's pretty darn cool. As for your cantrips at this level, you guessed it, pick your favorites. I'm going to say, if you don't have guidance in your party, I don't know how you made it this far into the game, but if you don't for whatever reason, take it here. I very much enjoy having light on a character like this because it will help activate a lot of item sets that, you know, are quite good that this character will be able to use quite well. And then you can take anything like Resistance, Thaumaturgy, Toll the Dead, whatever you want to take, just take it. As for your proficiencies at this level, Insight is going to come up quite a lot. Religion's decent, History's decent. They come up in rolls every so often, but might as well have a little bit of conversation skills and take Persuasion. That's probably the best one there. As for your prepared spells, I'm going to go ahead and say you probably want Sanctuary, you probably want Bless. We'll go ahead and grab Healing Word, and then Create or Destroy Water can also be pretty good because, well, we don't do a ton of lightning damage, but the lightning damage we do, or maybe if you have someone in your party that does lightning damage, will be doubled. At Cleric level 2, we get our Channel Divinity, which will be Destructive Wrath. When you roll thunder or lightning damage, you can use your Channel Divinity to deal maximum damage instead. So whatever the maximum damage roll will be, you can just ensure you do that once per day, which is pretty good and very, very strong. Just use it for a big Nova explosion of damage. Cleric level 3, we get some level 2 spells, including Shatter and Gust of Wind, as well as some of the other good level 2 cleric spells. We'll go ahead and talk about our best prepared spells when we get to level 5 here in a moment. Pick your favorite cantrip here. We'll go ahead and grab Blade Ward just to have it, I guess. I don't know, pick your favorite, doesn't matter. As for your feat, very similarly to if you decided to go 6 levels in fighter, take whatever you want here. If you want to take an ability improvement for either strength or constitution, you certainly can. You can take alert for good initiative, obviously. Lucky is great. Something like mobile can be good, but I think the best one here is just going to be Warcaster. It's just really damn good. Advantage on saving throws to maintain concentration on a spell, and you can also use a reaction to cast Shocking Grasp at a target moving out of melee range, which is just going to be very, very strong. And yeah, we'll grab that and move on to level 5. And it just feels very fitting for a character like this to have fucking Warcasters. It's just cool. It's just cool for this guy to have Warcaster. At Cleric level 5, we get Destroy Undead. When you successfully turn an undead creature, it also takes 4 to 24 radiant damage. You get the best spells in the game, which are level 3 cleric spells, and your spells that are always prepared. Nope, I wish it was Chain Lightning. You get Call Lightning, which is the concentration spell that does 3d10 lightning damage, which is very strong, and you also get Sleet Storm, which can very easily interrupt enemy concentration. So for your prepared spells as a cleric, I'm going to recommend probably something along the lines of you're going to want Healing Word all the time. You're going to want Create or Destroy Water. Aid is always nice to have as a buff, but hopefully maybe you have like a more dedicated higher level cleric that can cast a higher level. But if you don't, a level 3 aid will go a long way throughout the day. Spiritual Weapon is going to be good to have. Of course, you're going to want your Spirit Guardians. You're going to want your Mass Healing Word. You're going to want your Glyph of Warding. And then your last one could be whatever. It could be Bless. It could be Command. It could be Sanctuary. I'm going to go with Bless because this guy feels like a guy who would be throwing off blessings quite a bit. And this is a pretty damn solid loadout. You get a lot of offense, you get a lot of defense, you get a lot of healing. I like this loadout quite a lot, so I'll go with that. Now, this is another breakpoint in the character. If you want to take the 6th level into fighter, you certainly can. If you want to take the 6/6 split to get your very useful Thunderbolt Strike feature. When you deal lightning or thunder damage to a creature that is large or smaller, you can also push it up to 10 feet. That is a very, very powerful ability that I wish I could get. And you certainly can. Like I said, if you do the 6/6 split, it's totally viable. But I think an even stronger option is... Well, let me, before we talk about the even stronger option, there is another option that says if you want to take either the 6th level of Cleric or the 6th level of Fighter for the feat, and then take a level of Sorcerer to get Storm Sorcery and be able to fly, you can lean into that if you care more about the roleplay, because, you know, Thor can fucking fly. If you want to do that, you can. But like I said, I think the most powerful option is just taking 2 levels of Paladin and getting Divine Smites. So that's what I'm going to recommend. But you, like I've said 100 times in this video, if you don't want to, you can definitely just go with a 6/6 split and you will feel incredibly strong. And since this is a throwing build and you can't activate Divine Smites on your throws, it's probably better to not do it. But if you're ever not able to throw, or if you ever just want to smite the shit out of something, I think 2 levels of Paladin is a great way to go. As for your subclass, it truly does not matter. I think Oath of Vengeance is probably the best because it's the hardest to break, so you don't have to deal with that. And you can just deal an additional, you know, little bit of radiant damage every turn. So yeah, we'll go with that. And then at Paladin level 2, we get our, of course, smites, as well as another fighting style, grab defense for the extra AC. Your prepared spells, you only get a couple, so of course, Thunderous Smite is a given. And then the other one, I don't know, something like Heroism, maybe. It doesn't matter. Maybe Divine Favor. Yeah, let's go Divine Favor. It's a bonus action, a little bit of extra radiant damage. We'll do that. And that is the build. Overall, you are getting a Dwarf that makes a bunch of attacks, that deals a ton of thunder damage, and has some very, very powerful, you know, high-level Cleric spellcasting as well. So you get a lot out of this build, and it is a ton of fun. But as always, we can make it even better with items. So let's go over the items for this build, shall we? Okay, starting things off with your helmet slot. There are too many good options for the helmet slot. I just went with the Mask of Soul Perception because we don't have the best initiative on this character. Gives you +2 to attack rolls, initiative, and perception checks, which are all very useful things to have, and you can cast Detect Thoughts. But again, you can use truly anything in this slot. The Grayskull Helm will give you something you can concentrate on with Hunter's Mark and give you immunity to critical hits, as well as fire resistance. So you get that pretty early on, of course, from the Underdark Forge. So if you want to use that, by all means. Diadem of Arcane Synergy will be great here, as will the Fistbreaker Helm, you know, the usual suspects. And then I actually quite like the Helm of Baldur in here. The helmet heals you 2 hit points at the beginning of every turn, and you have a +1 bonus to armor class and saving throws, and you can't be stunned, and you can't be crit. So yeah, it's obviously a pretty late game option. Actually, technically speaking, you can go down to the area where you get this and just pick it up and leave. Like, you don't have to initiate the fight in order to take this. You can just pick this up because it's sitting on the pedestal to the side, and you can just leave and have it for pretty much the entirety of Act 3. So yeah, if you want to just grab it early, you can. So, you know, pick your favorite here. I like the extra initiative and damage, or not damage, extra attack bonus. So that's why I went with the Mask of Soul Perception, but if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. As for your cloak, I went with the Mantle of the Holy Warrior, which allows you to cast Crusader's Mantle, which is another way of just getting extra radiant damage on every single attack. Feels pretty fitting, but again, use whatever you want in this slot. This is a very item agnostic build. You could truly use any items on this build and you will feel strong. The main power of this build comes from its class and its subclass. So yeah, you're not really missing out on too much if you choose to go with any other items, but this is what I went with. The armor, I went with the Dwarven Split Mail. We're playing a Dwarf. It makes sense. You take 1 less piercing damage. You gain a +1 bonus to strength, saving throws, and checks. You gain disadvantage on stealth checks, obviously, because it's a semi-hover. And you get +2 to your constitution, which gives you more HP and obviously more constitution, which is good. So yeah, quite a good build. Other options here, though. Obviously, the Luminous Armor. You have Spirit Guardians. You have Divine Smite. You have plenty of ways of dealing radiant damage through your abilities and other items that you use, like the Gloves of Belligerent Skies. This character can certainly use all the Radiating Orb gear and just make an excellent user of that. So yeah, your Luminous Armor, your Callous Glow Ring, your Coruscation Ring, all these can combine to just do disgusting things, Boots of Stormy Clamor, and Gloves of Belligerent Skies. You just slap all of these on and people will not be able to move because you're making a ton of thunder. You're already doing a ton of thunder damage with your Booming Blade. You're doing a ton of radiant damage with your smites and, you know, this item combination, your Spirit Guardians as well. So, yeah, you could certainly use Radiating Orb gear and be totally justified in that. Same thing with the Luminous Gloves. You can add those in as well. But, Adamantine Split Armor, going back to your armor for just a moment, can of course get you through the early game. Helldusk armor is of course great. As for your gloves, I went with the gloves of Uninhibited Kushigo. The wearer deals an additional 1d4 damage with throw attacks and attacks made with improvised weapons. So you just get an extra d4 on all of your throwing attacks, which I feel like is pretty strong. You get these from Dareth Bonecloak in the Underdark for saving Balin. You don't even have to give her the Noble Stock, but if you want to, you certainly can. Other options, of course, like I mentioned, the Luminous Gloves, Legacy of the Masters for +2 to damage on +2 to attack rolls and damage rolls, so that's pretty good. The Reviving Hands, I think, are the best cleric item in the game. When you heal a creature, it gains the effect of Blade Ward. When you revive a creature, it gains the effect of Death Ward, so it's pretty damn solid. I was thinking of the Devotee's Mace is actually the item I was thinking of that gives you the big boost of healing, but, you know, it's a buff on heal item. And then you have the Gauntlets of Hill Giant Strength as well. If you don't want to deal with the potions, then you can just use these. But you can use the potions and get, you know, good effects from gloves. But, you know, if you just want to set your strength to 23 and forget about it, then you can certainly do that. But going back over to the buff on heal items, there's another item set you can use quite well. Hellrider's Pride, Boots of Aiding Comfort, Whispering Promise, and Ring of Salving. You can get these all very early on if you want to take your cleric levels earlier. And you can be the main healer of your party and just dish out a ton of buffs every time you heal. So you're additional 2 hit points. Bless every time you heal. Additional 3 hit points to yourself, which is good. And then also Blade Ward on everyone you heal. So yeah, it's a great set of items. And then the Amulet of Restoration can also help out with that. You guys know how buff on heal works. As for your boots, I went with the Boots of Persistent. You gain freedom of movement and Long Strider. Pretty good. Couple of abilities there just from a set of boots. You get these from Damon in Act 3 once you get to the city. Other options, though, the Boots of Shining that you can get from Inthara. When you cast a spell that requires concentration, you gain momentum for 1 turn, and when you're concentrating, you can't get knocked prone or be moved against your will. Also, +1 to your athletics is quite nice. Very, 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 very good set of boots that'll get you through most of the early game. And then another option is the Vital Conduit boots. When the wearer casts a spell that requires concentration, they gain 8 temporary hit points, so that's pretty good as well. So you want temporary hit points, or do you want to not be able to get knocked prone or be moved against your will? Both very solid options, so pick your favorite there. Moving on to the jewelry slots, I went with the Amulet of the Devout. You get a +2 bonus to your spell save DC, and you gain an additional use of your Channel Divinity once per day. Very solid. The +2 to spell save DC is going to be great, and you can use your this thing. Nope. Well, you can use your Turn Undead, but whatever Destructive Wrath or Wrath of the Storm, you can use that twice per day. It's pretty nice. And then other options, of course, we have the Spell Slot Amulet, which can give you another level 2 spell slot for more haste, or more not haste. Well, no, not haste. More Divine Smite shenanigans. And then the Unflinching Protector Amulet is also quite good. And then if you want to do the old school combination of Surgeon Subjugation and Killer Sweetheart, also an option. So moving on to the rings, we also have the Ring of Flinging, extra d4 to throw damage, pretty good. You get this incredibly early on. It can last you all throughout the game. It's just extra damage. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. And then we went with the Ring of Spiteful Thunder. When the wearer deals thunder damage to a reverberating creature, it becomes dazed unless it succeeds a Constitution saving throw. So if you want to like swap one of these rings out here, this can help with that build. Otherwise, you could throw on the Ring of Elemental Infusion when the wearer deals elemental damage with a spell or cantrip, aka Booming Blade. Until the end of your next turn, you deal an additional 1d4 of that element on your first successful weapon attack. So you'll be doing extra thunder damage, and then of course we have the Strange Conduit Ring. While concentrating, the wearer deals additional psychic damage when you're concentrating on a spell. But I think the Ring of Elemental Infusion makes the most sense. It's just extra thunder damage. Okay, finally, we can get moved on to the weapons. Now, your main hand weapon is going to be the Dwarven Thrower. This weapon will return to its owner when thrown, and a dwarf throwing this Warhammer deals an additional 1d8 bludgeoning damage. If the creature is large, huge, or gargantuan, the strike deals an additional 2 to 16 bludgeoning damage. Incredibly fun weapon. You could also just use Disguise Self if you don't want to play as a dwarf to get the effects of this, but if you're playing as a dwarf, it only makes sense. You're just doing a ton of damage. Just your base damage coupled with the extra 1d8 for being a dwarf, coupled with the extra d4 from the Ring of Flinging and your gloves. You're just doing a ton of extra damage with it. It's pretty cool. As for your shield, I went with the Sentinel Shield for the +3 bonus to initiative. And then for the bow slot, I went with the Hellfire Engine Crossbow for a level 4 cast of Lightning Arrow, which just feels pretty darn fitting for a big lightning chunk of damage. But of course, you have plenty of other options here. Early game, you get the Faithbreaker, which you can, of course, get from Jorah Ragzlin, which will be pretty helpful to get you through the early game. Like I mentioned, the Chargebound Warhammer that you can get from Dammon in Act 2. You bind it, of course, as an Eldritch Knight, and you deal an additional 1d6 lightning damage. Probably overall stronger than the Dwarven Thrower, but not nearly as thematic or cool. And then we also have the Hammer of the Just that you can get in the Tabernacle. You just go down and yoink it from a chest, and no one is the wiser. A little bit of extra radiant damage is pretty good. And then, of course, I would get Crucified if I didn't mention Nirulna. It's not a hammer, so it's not, you know, nearly as cool or as optimal, but, you know, obviously it is probably the best throwing weapon in the game. Extra 1d6 thunder damage, and the weapon will return to you when thrown. Cannot be forced to drop the weapon. When thrown, the weapon creates an explosion that deals 3d12 or 3 to 12 thunder damage in a 20-foot blast centered on the target. The problem with Nirulna is that 3 to 12 thunder damage hits your teammates, which can be very annoying. Obviously, if you're careful with it and make sure that you're not hitting your team with it, then it's just a ton of extra damage. But if you have other melee fighters in your party, they can get pretty annoying. So use it with caution. And then, of course, you get a extra 10 feet of movement speed and jump distance, and then immunity to falling damage, as well as just a lot of really cool stuff from Nirulna. It's obviously a very powerful weapon, but I don't like blowing my teammates up with thunder damage. Sue me. Other shields, you use Ketheric's Shield if you want better spell save DC instead of better initiative. The Shield of Devotion gives you an extra spell slot for more smites. Same thing with the Shield of the Undevout, I believe. Gives you the same level 1 spell slot. And then for your bow, Hellrider Longbow for more initiative if you want that. Deadshot for crit chance. And then, honestly, Gotcha Mail can be quite good here. It gives you light, so, you know, that's nice to have. And then also Celestial Haste, so you can just haste yourself. Also an option. So pick your favorites in terms of that. And make sure you have your potions or your gauntlets and go to town. You're doing a ton of throw damage. You can do great melee damage with Divine Smites as well. The world is your oyster. Overall, you're just getting a ton of damage out of this build, and it is so much fun. Hopefully you guys did end up enjoying this one. I really appreciate you guys watching these videos. I'm having a ton of fun with it. The next episode of the 4-player honor mode series should be out tomorrow. If I'm not lazy, if I am lazy, it'll be out the day after that. It just depends on how much I feel like making that go up. So if you pester me in the comments, I'll probably get it up. So yeah, just if anyone leaves a single comment, I guarantee you it'll go up tomorrow. But that being said, I'm gonna go ahead, get on out of here. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy.